All right, so Darren, we are live and we are direct. How are you today, sir?
I'm really good. The sun's out. NBA 30 cohort 12 finishes on Thursday. We're going forward. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're
Amazing.
on a
And
mission.
this I know, and I can't wait to get into it. And as ever, for anyone that can see this, sartorial elegance is the one. I need your tailor's details. Maybe I can't afford it yet, but can we
Yeah.
swap at the end?
It's
That's my
always
one.
it's always nice to have something to work towards.
Aspirational, and I'm sure this will be that. So I know that time is of the essence with so much going on for you and myself. So yeah, I'd love to launch in. I'll do a quick intro, and then we'll get into the main meat of today, if that's all right.
Sure, sure. Go for it.
All right. So welcome back, everyone, to Coffee with Kofi, the space where we explore the real stories behind success, purpose, and fulfillment in leadership as well as in life. Today, I'm super proud to be joined by Darren Miller, an entrepreneur and change maker whose journey is rooted in resilience, vision, and deep commitment to uplifting others. From not even knowing what the word entrepreneur meant growing up, to now helping Black-owned businesses access funding and thrive. Darren's story is truly powerful, practical, and deeply inspiring. So, in this episode, we'll explore Darren's beginnings, the turning points that shaped him, and the lessons he's learned about following your passion, not just for success, but for genuine fulfillment. So, grab your coffee, your water, your juice, whatever you would like to sip, and let's get into that inspiration. Welcome once again, Darren. Welcome once again.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me onto your incredible show.
No, it's mine. The pleasure is definitely mine. So I really wanted to get into it and put you in the hot seat, and ask in 60 seconds, no more,
Mhm.
I mean, for you to give us the context of the man that is before us today.
So you're looking at a man that's been shaped a lot by my grandparents and parents. I grew up with my grandparents, and were Jamaican. Growing up in Southeast London at a time where education wasn't always. When you think about educating young black children, especially black boys, I don't think we were always given a fair crack of the whip, so to speak. And
Mm,
but yeah, we had to persevere. We had to come through, and that helped to shape my journey, helped to shape the man I am today. Various challenges, overcoming those challenges, keeping an eye on the goal. Where do I want to get to? What is it I want to achieve with my life? How am I going to do it? And that's who I've become today.
amazing. And you talked about your grandparents and being part of that inspiration to be who you are today. Did you ever imagine from them or elsewhere that you would become an entrepreneur?
As you said in your introduction, entrepreneur, the word didn't even exist when I was growing up. I'm sure it existed in the diary, in the dictionary, but it wasn't in common parlance. We didn't use
Mm,
that word. We did use the word business owner. We did use the word perhaps founding a business. Uh, that was the sort of terminology, but a small business owner was really the terminology of the day. And
mhm.
no, when I think about my journey, think about my schooling, I never imagined. It was never my intention to start my own business. But
Mm,
it's as I grew and had more life experiences and realized I was able to deliver projects. I guess that's what gave me the confidence to eventually start my own enterprise.
I'm with you. And so, at what point did that word start making sense to you? And I would like to add, how did you shift from idea to identity?
Mhm, mhm. I think like so many people, we start off. So when I was growing up, I think back to my childhood and my adolescence. I wanted to make like most people want to make our parents proud, and I thought,
Mhm,
if I could get a job in a bank, dress, be a professional bank, not necessarily an accountant, but certainly working for a notable institution. I thought that's where I could actually build a career. When I was
Mhm.
growing up, people had jobs for life. You know, there were people that had started working in the post office and never ever left. They went from retired, or they worked for British Telecom, or they worked for a big organization, a bank. I've mentioned banks already. It could be a big pharmaceutical organization or a huge corporate. And they went through the ranks. And the idea is that you would stay there until you retired. Obviously, now it's all changed.
No, absolutely, it definitely has. And I think the pivots and plot twists are coming thicker and faster than ever before with technology, the so global challenges that we're facing, and organizations changing direction in terms of what they
Yeah.
do. So please,
But
Darren, tell us about
what led me to my
mm,
own? Sorry, yeah.
tell us about your first business idea, where it came from, and I suppose really what you learned from your first venture.
So, like so many people I come across, Black people I come across, is the idea really, the birth of the idea sometimes can be a catalyst, and that catalyst isn't always necessarily a positive catalyst. So it sometimes can be a challenge at work, and it causes one to step back, reassess, and decide, do I want to continue along this career path, this trajectory, or do I want to go in a new direction? And that was definitely the case for me. I was working for, you know, quite a large corporate, part of an American owned conglomerate. And I just realized that wasn't the place for me. There was an incident at work. I got the blame for it, even though I could prove I wasn't even at work at the time. They checked the paperwork, realized it wasn't me, but still, you know, sent me this stark warning, said, look, you know, if anything like this happens again, you're going to be for the high jump. And well, hold on a minute. I just can't stay in this organization. And so I was desperate to leave. I was desperate to leave, desperate to start a business. But I didn't, at the time, uh, mobile phones were quite new, so there was an explosion, and it wasn't like a regulated professional industry like it is now. So there were people selling mobile phones in corner shops, and there were obviously barber shops and food shops, but I didn't want to do that. I thought about what I could do, and on the back of a conversation, someone introduced the idea to me of linen hire, which I'd never heard about. But when I looked into it, I realized, hold on a minute, this is not a sexy business, but it's a business that could grow, could scale, and could deliver really tangible, a significant revenue and change my life. And that's what I embarked upon. So my first business was a linen hire business. And for those who don't know what linen hire is, if you go to a nice restaurant and you see those crisp tablecloths and the napkins and the chef's wear, it all comes from an external company. And the reason they do that is because most restaurants don't have laundering facilities on the premises. So they contract that service to a third party who delivers. And that's what I did. I used to deliver daily for some, bi-daily for others, weekly for others, depending on how busy the restaurants were. That was my first business.
Incredible. So, I mean, I've picked this up from the BVI 30, but it's understanding the value that you can bring, positioning it correctly, and then executing. Because if you don't execute, I guess then people are not coming back to you for repeat business, which is the lifeblood of any organization. Oh, thank you so
Yes.
much. And from that business, what were some of the biggest obstacles that you faced early on, especially around, I imagine, access to funding or any other type of support? And really, how did you navigate those things, being that you're, breaking ground in an area that hadn't been your
Yes.
plan?
Um, so, sorry, one sec. How did I? So, firstly, I coming from a staunch Jamaican family, we couldn't mess around. We were God fearing. We used to, go to church every Sunday. The things that you just had to do, and one of those was at the end of our schooling, we had to make a decision. At the time, going to university was not for everyone. The school I went to wasn't a very good school. It was a comprehensive school, and it was in Southeast London in Brockley. It was awful as a school, to be quite frank. And I remember my careers day when they said to me, Darren, what do you want to do? And I said to them, I'd like to be a pilot. And they literally laughed me out of school. And at the time, they used to address you by your surname. So they said, Miller, painting and decorating, carpentry, plumbing, right? Next, and that was it. And then the idea of doing something as great and as grand as being a pilot, that wasn't for us. And the same way, they didn't. University wasn't even offered to us. So I left school quite young. I left school at 16, 18. I went on, stayed in the sixth form. I left school at 18. And so, yeah, start when I had to. I when I left school, my grandparents were like, "Listen, what are you going to do with your life?" And my grandfather, was forcing me to go into the military. I was like, "I'm not going in the military. There's no way I'm getting in the military." I couldn't tell him that directly, but what it did, it provided the catalyst for me to leave home. So I left home at 18, 19. I left home and I bought my first property. So I had my first property at 19. And that meant when I came to starting my business, I already had a house. And I had to use that house as a collateral to get a business loan. And it's the business loan that provided the money to get, it essentially was a commercial unit, a small factory unit. And we set up in that unit. And we started business there. I was 21 when I started. I dragged my young brother. He was only 18, and off we went.
Oh my goodness! And that is incredible. And I suppose what I hear there is, by way of the obstacle, is the aspirations that can become ingrained and permanent in us from a lack of representation, but also a lack of encouragement. I mean, if they're saying Miller, plumbing, carpentry, painting and decorating, and you believed that, then that could have been the calling that you fell into rather than you were capable of, so to speak. So
you make a really valid point, Kofi, because so many of my schoolmates did believe it, and they went off and they pursued that as a career. And I think there's if you're a painter and decorator, unless you start your own painter and decorating firm, there are some limitations to how much you can earn.
Of course. And I mean, that comes on to sort of intergenerational wealth, and then being able to provide the security and the platform for any children that should come, that we get blessed with thereafter, to set up and have the tool to do what they want to do as well. So yeah, it's a big melting pot of sort of issues and challenges. And that's why I said it. This would be inspirational, because against all odds, you persevered and opened up, dragging your brother with you on this mission, which I'm sure he may or may not thank you for, but I'll chat to him soon. He's around.
Well, I'm going to ask him that question, actually. I might not like the
answer. So was there a defining moment, maybe an uncomfortable one, that sort of pushed you even closer to your purpose? So you've got the linen factory, the linen business going, linen hire business going, but you didn't stop there. As I see you today, the CEO of BBI, the Black British Initiative, running the incredible MBA 30 program in conjunction with SOAS. So you haven't stopped there. So just really want to come back to, was there anything else that pushed you even closer to where you are today,
I think in business, you make your own luck, and you make your own luck by seizing opportunities. You go out there every day. You have to be willing to go out there. You have to be tenacious. You have to be persistent. You have to be consistent as well, and resourceful. And we certainly had those attributes. And so even when I think about the linen hire business, just by every day, we used to phone. Back then, there was no internet. So to actually prospect for business, one had to do it the really hard way, which was using the yellow pages of phone directory. And so what I did, literally, we had, because I'm at heart, I'm a family man, I dragged in my brother, my sister, I got my mum to help us with the accounts. I mean, I literally brought the whole family in, and we got a lucky break. We ended up securing this client that was in central London. At the time, it was a really famous restaurant, and he said, okay, if you can get me a positive reference, I'll give you a break. And we managed to get him a positive reference. And then once you've got one, and then two, and then three. You got these reference points, and having these reference points made it possible to take on bigger and better clients. And at one point, we had 70% of Chinatown we were servicing. We had some of the best restaurants in Mayfair, in Belgravia, in Kensington. I mean, we had some really formidable clients, and I think what kind of led me to one of the experiences which stayed with me was when we wanted to expand that business. We got to the point where we couldn't actually keep up with the work. We put on a day shift, a night shift, and we still couldn't keep up. And we were so tired that my brother and I had near misses. I mean, I was driving on one occasion, I fell asleep, and he did the same. We said, look, this can't continue. What we're going to have to do is that we're going to have to buy better equipment, because the equipment we had was good, but we'd outgrown it. So we needed better, more commercial equipment. And we went to the bank. At the time, we were probably turning over in a region of about £300,000. And that doesn't sound like a lot of money now, but it was a lot of money then. And to put that into context, a house at the time cost about £50,000.
Mm-hmm.
So £300,000 was a lot of money. And we said to the bank, we need 50k to buy this new equipment, so we could actually increase our capacity to deliver more output, more processing power, take on more customers. And even though they could see the amount of money going through the account, and 50k, if you're doing 350k, it's like, was it 15% of our turnover, 13% of our turnover, thereabout. He just couldn't bring himself to give what he called us lads, a couple of black lads, the money. He couldn't stomach the idea. It was just too rich for his blood almost to give us that funding. And so we were in a dilemma. We knew we couldn't keep going because the business would start to suffer. You can only go at full whack for so long. So we sold it. We were forced to sell it. So we sold the business, and we took the money, and then we went into property. So we did property for a while, and it was just renovating houses, converting them into flats. We did that for quite a while until the market got saturated. Every man and his dog. There was an explosion of TV programs about how easy it was to make money from property. And so where we used to go to the auctions and buy the properties, and then we'd only be competing against professionals, instead we ended up competing against retailers, like people who were buying it for their own consumption, and they would push the prices up and ruin the margin. So in the end, property became really difficult to do unless you were in a position where you could buy land. And we were not in that position. We couldn't get the funding to buy land, et cetera, and develop like that. So we, but fortunately for me, the products I used to use, my where I used to go about doing my property developments, I used to do them really nice. I mean, almost the standards you might expect to find in Chelsea or Knightsbridge. I used to do it to a really high standard, but it used to be in Southeast London or Southwest London. So I used to try and tempt people who really wanted to be in Chelsea but couldn't afford to be in Chelsea, get them so they could stay in Chelsea if you want. You can buy a shoebox in Chelsea, or you could buy a 2 or 3 bedroom flat in Battersea. And then when Battersea got really popular, they started to call it South Chelsea. To be in South Chelsea anymore, previously Battersea, and now I had to move to Clapham. So I always used to try and do things nicely to get people to trade postcode. So you might not have the ideal postcode, but you've got a better property in an adjoining postcode. And because I used to do it really well, and I used to use beautiful kitchens and bathrooms and wardrobes, the people I used to buy from in Italy asked me to represent them. So I ended up representing these companies and helping them to establish in the UK, helping them to rebrand where they might be middle to high, make them into super luxury brands in the UK. So I became a branding expert and someone that was able to reposition a brand so it sat right at the top, was able to achieve really high prices, and by doing so, handsome profit margin. So that's kind of what I started doing for these various different companies. So yeah, that's kind of how it evolved.
Wow, Darren. My brain is firing in all sorts of directions. And when we were setting this up, I said, don't worry about any preparation because we'll vibe and we'll riff like an old school band. But I hear in what you've said so many things that I'd like to draw attention to. I think you said something about luck earlier, and I think
Mm,
I've come to believe that luck is really when preparation meets an opportunity, and that's you being prepared. I've also heard in there that necessity is the mother of invention and creation, because you were at bursting point, redlining, falling asleep at the wheel, and couldn't get the money. And instead of,
mm,
burying yourself even further, you pivoted, then sold it, and then looked to move into something different, not at all related, but using the
mm,
same dedication, etc. I'm sure, to do
mm,
that, that led you then to become a representative for these brands. But throughout all of it, from the very beginning, something you said that's really stuck with me is it's evident in how you show up today. It's that appreciation for the aesthetic and quality. So
yes.
the linens has to be of quality and has to be of a standard, and therefore got you into
Mm,
establishments that you probably have no business going into, because you didn't start from it, you haven't got any family heritage in
mm,
it. The properties that you developed maintain that high quality aesthetic, and led to people saying, okay, I'll leave Chelsea and I'll come to Battersea. Now, my mum used to live in Battersea, so I spent part of my time
right.
there. Battersea was not in the 80s and 90s what Battersea is today. So when
Exactly.
you're convincing people to do that, you had to have a proposition that was compelling, and the quality came
Mm,
through again, which makes me really, really sit with the idea that how we do anything can be how we do everything, really.
mm,
If
mm.
you noted that theme throughout your journey previously.
Yes, yeah. I think standard, working to a standard, work attention to detail, people recognize it, and being decent and honorable where you can. I mean, business is not necessarily a straight line, right? It's
No.
up and down. There are challenges. I mean, I've not always succeeded in business. I've had incredible successes. I've seen awful failures. Business is a um, difficult beast,
Mhm.
but with tenacity, with resourcefulness, with the ability to pivot, it must. There's an old adage that people talk issues now, and they talk about failing fast. That's really true. Like, go at it hard, do the best you can. But if it turns out that yeah, you just can't make it work, then you have to be prepared to let it go and do something else.
Mm. That's so true. I literally wrote something about this today, where I've come to realize that turmoil in our lives often precedes an invitation to transformation.
Mm,
Um, and I say it's an invitation because sometimes people will hold on to what was, rather than accepting and surrendering to what actually is, and using their energy to focus on, like you have, the next
mm,
chapter, and how you can make the most of what you've already learned, but evolve and grow from that.
yeah.
So yeah, no, some great words there, Darren. And to keep it moving, I really wanted to turn to the theme of purpose, passion, and mission, um, and ask you the question of, what does fulfillment look like to you um, now, and did success always feel like that?
So yeah, so when I think about where I was as a young man and what success was to me then, success was linked to commercial success. So being able to build something from scratch and grow it, for it to become profitable, for it to deliver a really great lifestyle, so you can look after your family and your loved ones. For me, that was success, and there's an aspect of that which is still the case. But life can take you in different directions, and I believe we're all here for a purpose, and sometimes we don't know what that purpose is. And it sometimes it shows some people. Sometimes I imagine some people never really realize their full purpose, and there's
Mm,
others that as you go through life's journey and you start to understand what this thing called life is all about, you realize that perhaps this is, I think you achieve peace when you're doing what you were set out to do. When you actually find yourself cast in the right role, a role that suits your character, a role that is right for you, where you can give your maximum. And I think that's certainly been the case for me, where on my journey, I've realized that it's not necessarily about making money and about being super wealthy. Instead, it's about all of the journeys, all of the twists and the turns I've had and the things I've seen. How can I use that information, that knowledge, that experience to help others? And for me, that is links to my purpose. It links to why I'm here, and what gives me fulfillment is actually passing on the baton, helping others to realize their full prospects. Because I've seen it close up. I've seen, through my experiences with corporates trying to raise money, building businesses. I've seen what the challenges are, and very often when I've been in rooms, fortunately for me, I've managed to kind of, in my niche, I've managed to do really well at some point and get to almost at the top of my niche. And where I've been able to do that, I've been in rooms where there's no one that looks like me. There are no other Black people in those rooms. And that says something about society and how much more we need to climb as a group of people.
No, that. There are so many truths in there that could just be a dissertation on its own. I will say that it does speak to me of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once you've achieved the basics of security, the love and belonging, all of that good stuff, you get to this point where the self-actualization mission kicks in, and you've expressed it, you're starting to do more and give back more, and then transcending from, I'm not sure what I'm doing, I'm not sure what I'm about. I love the way you put it, finding a role that suits your character, and then you can truly transcend and be at peace, the peace that we're all born with, but we lose along the way when we're trying to figure out who we are and what we stand for. So a beautiful segue to my next question, which is Darren now, and your work with the Black British Initiative, and in particular the provision of the MBA 30, which, having been a grateful participant of that and beneficiary, aims to support others. I guess, how did your own struggles fuel your desire to build something like that, as ambitious as that is going to empower and has already empowered many others?
Sure. So there have been times in my life where I've been able to start a business and grow it at pace and get it to a significant revenue. And during those times, I've needed to take on finance. And so I've been in rooms with private equity rather than venture capital. And when I've been in those rooms and they've been talking about my business plans and looking at my forecast and my projected revenue and profit and loss accounts and balance sheets, I noticed that on occasions I was at a disadvantage, even though I had a professional next to me who was an accountant who was there to kind of make sure that the deal I was doing was the right kind of deal for my business. Sometimes the language, sometimes the calculations, like you'll know, because you've been through MBA 30, there are different ratios that people can apply. So there's a ratio you can have a look at when the cash is going to run out in the business, by looking at the balance sheet and looking at the profit and loss account. But there are different types of ratios that if you know what you're doing and what you're looking for, somebody can look at your business plan and look at your projections, and unless you're across all the detail yourself, unless you have a deep understanding of it yourself, you can find yourself at a disadvantage, because their knowledge, their insights means that they can see things about your business that you can't even see. Based on your numbers. And there were times I was in that situation because of my background, because of my schooling. At a time where I was like, hold on a minute, I put something together that's really powerful, but this guy is asking me some questions, and my accountant's stepping in and answering questions on my behalf. And I wasn't always, after that, to go back and say, well, what was the point of that? What were they trying to achieve with these questions and this type of approach? And it made me realize that by not going to business school, and I'm up against private equity people who went to one business school or another, I'm at a
Mhm.
huge disadvantage. And understanding how many of the people I've spoken to through MBA 30 have gone about building their businesses and how they're trying to grow their businesses. They are trying to build and grow solely based on experience. And the reality is, you know, there's some lessons, theories, frameworks you cannot learn through experience. So that's kind of what shaped me. It's kind of like I realized there are knowledge deficits, there are blind spots that I had. And those blind spots, in some instances, held me back. They were a disadvantage. And so I want to help others who will encounter those situations to help them to negate and negotiate those obstacles safely and go on to grow their businesses.
Fabulous stuff. And, you know, blue tick verified on my part, because it is such a wonderful blend of theoretical application, but practical insights from people who I would never have had access to, who've been there. Andrew Zenny comes to mind immediately. He's been there, he's done it, and gives his time to help us understand some of the pitfalls, but also opportunities there. Barbara Campos at Joseph is another one when she talked about the importance of leadership and building the right team around you, diversity of thought, you know, not because it's trending, but because she recognizes that she has her strengths, but she needs complementary strengths in the team that she builds around her in order to drive forward. And so, yeah, absolutely powerful stuff that you're doing. And when you look forward, what's the biggest impact you hope to see over the next, let's say decade, through initiatives like MBA 30? And what keeps you motivated to keep going with it through tough days? Because the landscape for funding is different. Anything that says black, this, that, and the other, in some corners, it's like, oh, can we just dilute that a little bit because you know, the sentiment has shifted or whatever. But what keeps you going on the tough days, and what impact do you think you would like it to have over the next decade?
It's the messages I receive. Like when I hear from somebody and I'll give you an example, the most recent graduation event, which took place in September last year. And to hear the stories, we had a number, we had one person from each cohort speak at the graduation. And I never knew some of the challenges, some of the backstories that I didn't know at the time that they were going through, but they understood the value of the opportunity. And despite the odds, despite the obstacles and barriers, they stayed. They went through the program, and they have now gone on to reap the benefit. So it's when I see how the program is touching people's lives, it's not, you know, I'm not saying it's a silver bullet, because ultimately, over a period of time, we spoke about the next 10 years, over a period of time, what we're doing is we're building an ecosystem. So we're trying to get to a point where we're fusing together education, funding, social capital. And you mentioned that. And we are starting to tick some of those boxes already. So you mentioned Andrew Denny, who actually has a masterclass today.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, he's in a masterclass with BBI later on today. But, you know, getting Black entrepreneurs, if Black entrepreneurs in this country are running micro businesses generally, and you know the average revenue for a Black entrepreneur is embarrassingly low. And so what we want to do is to bring together education, funding, social capital. You mentioned Barbara Campos from Joseph. I mean, there's so many. We've had executives from BlackRock, from Bank of England, from MasterCard, from Fortnum and Mason. I mean, the list goes on. For the next cohort 12, cohort 13, that starts in April, we have the CEO of one of Britain's most successful companies in their sector, the CEO of Retamanja. So we have just incredible people coming to speak at the cohort, and I'm hoping and I'm praying that in 10 years from now, we will have at least one unicorn.
Well, that would be something. That would be something. And yeah, if I dial it down to a micro level, there's something you said earlier about wanting to be successful, to be able to provide for your family, but also the options that young Miller, was given at school. There's something really powerful in what you're doing, because there is this ripple effect, I think, from the different cohorts. 13 coming up in April is incredible. The game shifts in terms of visibility and the impact of the representation of Black business owners, that I think is incredibly impactful for the whole community, not just the Black community, because more Black entrepreneurs doing well, more revenue from HMRC as one thing, but also employment opportunities for the broader economy, and the ability to support our families and then the families of the people that we employ as part of that growth journey is super impactful and powerful. So not a plan.
I agree. I completely agree. I mean, the
Thank you,
UK, because of its rich past, a population made up of different cultures, a richness, and and we see the benefits. We see the benefits in food. We see the benefits in art. We see the benefits in music, culture. It's one of the reasons that London is arguably the most desirable. It's always in the top 1, 2, 3 desirable cities in the world, and it's because of this incredible richness. And a component of that are what Black Brits bring to the UK. And in addition to the culture, the music, the food, and everything else I've already mentioned, we could also bring a significant jump in revenue. And it's interesting that Coutts Private Bank put a figure on what Black entrepreneurs could bring to the UK economy. In 2023, they went really public and they spoke about how Black entrepreneurs could bring 75 billion to Britain's exchequer, and that's huge. And that's huge. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to unlock that revenue. So we're here to stay. We want the country to be bigger and better. At the moment, constantly, there's reports about how the UK is not growing economically in the way that it should. Black entrepreneurs, Black Brits are part of that solution. BBI and the MBA 30 is helping to unlock that potential.
Oh, wow. When that happens, I think we can really say we are in a Great Britain, a Great Britain where opportunity is equal to the talent that's out there. So I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it. And I was thinking of it, but this was more important what you said, but just to thank you for all that you do and the team, Gabe and everyone else, to put in that work, because it's not about you at this point. You could have an easier life, I am sure, than finding speakers, arranging all the different things that you're doing for the multiple cohorts that you've done, but you've chosen to do something different, which is give back in such a really meaningful way. So thank you. For me, cohort 9, 10, can't remember, and everyone else that's been on it, and our children too, that are going to see and understand things differently because of what we've been able to experience. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And as you say, it's not really about me. This is really about legacy. It's about building an institution that can be there to serve generations long after I've sort of gone on to do something else. So yes, we want to build an institution that is robust, professional, purposeful, and bring us true value to the UK.
Brilliant. And yeah, there's so much in here that I love it, because I'm in the moment, I'm with you, but I can't wait to watch this back and just listen to those nuggets. And to pivot a little bit, I really wanted to delve into some practical advice for people that are listening or watching it, however they choose to digest this, and ask you, what's one piece of advice you'd give someone who is sitting there right now thinking, I want to start a business, but I'm stuck on where to begin?
But one of the things I think that really helped me in business is that I went and worked for somebody for a while. I was only when I think about, I was young and it seemed like a long time, but I was only in the working for an employer. Well, I think about working for a private, well, both of them actually. I worked for two big organizations, one public, one private, and that showed me how big organizations work internally, kind of like how the different departments mesh together, you know, different how they work in terms of each department will have their own budget, and they have to defend those budgets, and they have to interact with each other and engage. And I saw processes, I saw how things are process driven. So when I left and started to work for myself, I already understood what it took to build a scalable organization that could go on and flourish. That's really important. And then planning. One of the, you will know, before anyone joined the cohort, I interviewed them. I've now interviewed in the region of 600, getting on to close to 700 entrepreneurs. And I would say 85% of them don't have a business plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real problem, because as the old saying goes, to fail to plan is to plan to fail. So a business plan is really important, because even though once you actually start your business, the plan may take a completely different shape, but at least start with a really robust plan, a well-researched plan that is practical, tangible, and deliverable. And that's what you get with the MBA 30. As you know, to pass the course, you have to produce a business plan, and it's that business plan that is determined whether or not you pass. It's carries 70% of the marks. So I would say that plan, be resourceful, network really hard, because just getting out there, staying at, sometimes I don't feel like networking, I'd rather stay at home. But I can tell you, every time I go out to a networking event, I probably meet 2 or 3 people that are worth knowing that I wouldn't have met otherwise. So there's and there's good debt and bad debt. I think as a community, we're frightened of debt. We're petrified of it. Bad debt, borrowing lots of money to buy Christmas presents and go on holiday. No, that's a no. Good debt, if you are able, if you have a business opportunity, but you need to buy stock, or you've created something which is really powerful, and you have a sample of customers who said, this is amazing, and you need to market it to reach more people so you can convert more customers, then that is the kind of investment that is worth making. So I think that we have to get more comfortable with debt finance, and not trying to do everything with our limited resource, because you have limited resource, it impacts the quality of what you do, and the speed you can move at, and ultimately you just get worn out, because you're trying to, you're pedaling at 100 miles an hour, but you just don't have the fuel in the tank, and ultimately you'll run out and then you'll crash. So I think there are just a few lessons, but there are so many. MBA 30, you'll learn the lessons.
No, definitely. I can't recommend it highly enough. And yeah, again, that full of gems just off the top of your head from lived experience that is useful. And I think for me, one of the biggest ones was the business plan, because I had one. I'd certainly begun one, and the subtext to it was, well, God will provide. Yes, that's it. On God, I shall do this work, because it's my mission, it's my calling. And coming and being part of the program, and then having to come up with a 5-year business plan, just sharpen my focus no end. And then having that interrogated by, I think it was Mike at the time, who came from the sort of VC company, just to sort of go through very directly what we were talking about, was just insightful and humbling beyond belief, because I understand now why so many businesses will start with good intention but fail to really flourish, because I'm not saying anything about God's powers, but there needs to be some practical applications, milestones that we have in place, and things that we're going to do to achieve our potential. And I think that's what I've taken away from MBA 30, and I hope many more will sign up to and be able to do in the
Yes.
future.
God helps those who help themselves. Yeah, you can't just pray for it and not do anything about it. You have to take the practical, tangible steps yourself too.
True stories, true stories. And Darren, looking back, you mentioned so many lessons, etc. What failures or missteps now feel like really important lessons to you, that you might be able to share?
I think there, there's on a couple of there's talking about adages. There's an adage that says, "Build it, and they will come." There were times where I built something really excellent, and people said, I'm not saying it's excellent. People in the know said this is amazing, and I thought because it was amazing, people will come. But I think there's a frustration when you're a Black entrepreneur. If you can do something really brilliant and amazing, and you think, right, okay, but you've got to try and convince someone to give you the resource, the funding to do it. And sometimes it's impossible because in this country, we don't have a successful track record in business yet. Yeah, you think about my parents came here in the Windrush generation. So, tail end of the Windrush generation, that's not that long ago. So, whereas you have the Indian community is deeply entrenched in business. They've been in business. Don't get me wrong, in Africa and Caribbean, we do business, but I'm talking about in this country. We haven't got a successful track record yet. That's changing. And so when it comes to trying to get some funding from a bank or another institution, that's been on the ground. And so you're in a dilemma. You either, if you're brilliant and you want to do something, you either don't do it because you haven't got the resource, or you take a punt. And there's been times when I've taken a punt and I've built something, I've managed to have the resource to build it. And now I was hoping that now it's built and it's excellent, I've made the case. Now I'm going to get the funding. That's not always been possible. And that's some of the lessons I've learned. Sometimes you have to have the money in the bank before you embark. If you try and just take a punt and hope it's going to come later, it may not come, and you can fall short. And I've seen that a couple of times. I've experienced that directly a couple of times. So I think that's one of the lessons. When I look back through my career and I look at, and then sometimes it's also about using dependable people. I've also been guilty of working with people, giving them a chance and saying like, okay, I'm going to give them a chance because they're from my community and I'm going to try and help them. And they've let me down. So I think sometimes you have to be, when you're making a decision, a commercial decision, it has to be head over heart. That's really important too. You have to make a hard-nosed decision. And then once you're really successful, then you can help people.
Yeah, no, again, really useful insights, because you talked about it right at the beginning when you were starting the linen business and you were going to get that amazing contract. They wanted to do what Amazon does now, right? Like the review of Darren, what is your track record, proof of this concept before I part with my cash? And you had to produce one. And sometimes energy doesn't lie, but overlaying your intuition with some logic is a really powerful recipe for better decisions. So that's a great one to take away. Now, penultimate question for you, Dan, because I'm mindful that this has flowed so fast that I can't believe we're out already. But
I think we've got a minute left or thereabouts. So anyway, carry on.
Yeah, so about that. So I'll speak 1.5 speed. Here we go. If you could go back and have a coffee, because we've got to keep on brand, with your younger self at the age of 18, what's the one question you'd ask, and how would you answer it?
The question I would ask my younger self, I would probably say to my younger self, where do you want to be 10, 15, 20 years from now? And are you taking the right steps to achieve that objective? That's probably what I would have helped myself to ask myself. Think about everything that I'm doing. And am I thinking far enough ahead? And I think that's really important, because I think that's when you're young, you're kind of on a mission, right? And 2 years feels like a long time. 18 or 3 years. Like, wow, it's 3 years away. I'm 25, I'm going to be 28. I'm 25, I'm going to be 30. My God, that's really up. And you realize that you need to perhaps make decisions, think a little bit further ahead, and understand that however long you think it's going to take to achieve your objective, double it. It's going to take you twice as long. So you've got to think differently.
True. That is so true. So true, Darren. Thank you so much for this. And I think before we sort of close and I'll do a conclusion, I'd love to just ask, I can't believe we're in March, mid-March already. What is coming up for you personally, professionally, over the remainder of this year that you're excited about, that you can share?
We're building this incredible directory now. I think we're in a really unique place, and we're building the directory. I can tell it's going to be called the Talent Repository. It's a repository of Black MBA qualified talent. I think it's going to be the only directory of its type, and it responds to the need and the question I get from corporates who say to me, Darren, we want to diversify our supply chain. Where can we find? We struggle to know where to look to find Black entrepreneurs. And now I have the answer. The answer is a talent repository, an incredible directory, qualified talent. Every one of them would have been through the MBA 30 program, and they are here, ready to contract and deliver an outstanding service. So that's really exciting. We're excited about the next graduation ceremony, and going on to educate more and more Black entrepreneurs, with the mission to educate 2,000 Black entrepreneurs by 2028. Difficult to do, but that's the intention.
Big and bigger. And I love what you do with the team, and we'll continue to share and support that. So yeah, for sure, in the notes, I'll make sure people find a link to find out more and get themselves interviewed, grilled by you, and maybe Gabe as well, on what their intentions are and how they may be able to represent the incredible work that you're doing more. So thanks, thank you once again. And what stands out from my conversation with you, Darren, is that fulfillment isn't something that's accidental. It really is intentional, and it comes from aligning your work with purpose, staying resilient through setbacks, and remembering that your journey can open doors for others ultimately. We talked about self-actualization. So I just want to say a huge thank you once again for sharing your story so openly so far, from the humble beginnings to building impact through initiatives like Black British Initiative and MBA 30. I really believe this conversation will resonate with people, and hope that they will share it far and wide, so we can get to that goal of what you set out. So yeah, thank you so much, Darren.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and congratulations on your incredible podcast and all the work you're doing. And also, I mean, you've been wonderful when it comes to introducing Black entrepreneurs and raising awareness of the work of BBI and the impact of MBA 30. That's not gone unnoticed, and we are deeply appreciative of what you do for us.
Oh, no, each one teach one, and I often say that sharing is caring and giving is living, and I think where you've done the work is here. The least I can do is use the platform and the talents I've got to make it spread through my network. So teamwork is that dream work. I've got loads of these little things, so I'm going to stop, cut.
I love it. All right.
Hopefully I'll see you very soon.
Thank you. Okay, take care.
Thanks again. Bye now.